One or two students might come in a little bit later.
No worries.
There you go. On behalf of the University of Sunderland, Faculty of Business Law and Tourism, welcome you all to this week's guest lecture. And we have the welcome attendance from Matty Pendergast, a former alumni, former student president of the university, former university governor, and he graduated with a BSc Honours in Health Studies in 1997. Matty is now Director of Identity Consult, which is a construction, project management, and quality survey consultancy business. And he may make reference to it, but he's left his thumbprint on various buildings on our campuses. And Matty may talk about that. But the title of Matty's presentation is today, 10 Tips to Succeed in Your Career. Matty, thank you very much for joining us, and over to you.
Thanks, Derek, and good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be on Teams, unfortunately, because it's just a pandemic at the moment. I'd love to have done this at St. Peter's campus or Tom Cowie Lecture Theatre, one of those, one of the sort of very nice facilities on site. But however, we are where we are, and it's just having to do stuff on Teams at the moment. So hopefully you can all hear me. You'd be pleased to know I find it nothing more sort of irritating when someone says, I'll just share my screen, and proceeds to bore you to death with a PowerPoint slide deck for an hour or so. So I will use some visuals, but I'll try and limit those and just keep it as a sort of free-flowing discussion as best I can. But I will just share my screen to start with, so just to give you a little bit of an overview. So if you just bear with me for 2 seconds while the technology cranks up. Okay. So Derek, I'll rely on you to say that. Can you see that on behalf of everyone? Yeah.
Yes, we can see the slides.
Excellent. Okay. So I will drop out of this again in a second. I won't just keep this on for the whole time. So we'll keep it sort of a mixture of PowerPoint slides and also just me talking. So top 10 tips to develop your career. Okay. So that's an interesting one, isn't it? And before we start, I'll say very much all the best ideas in life are stolen. So in terms of me pulling these together, this is sort of pulled together from a whole raft of different sort of texts that I've read and my own sort of life experience, really, with my top 10 tips. So hopefully you find some use out of that as you embark on your careers. So just to give you a bit of an introduction. So on the left there, that's me in 1997. I look better now, don't I? What do you think? Say that was me took for the student handbook in 1997 when I was president of the student union. So that's why, hence the green tinge on that. That's a scan from the student handbook. I say that one of the middles from about 10 years ago when I won the Project Manager of the Year award, which was just sort of a highlight for myself. And then the last photo on the right there is my front bedroom doubling as a home office, like everybody else is doing at the moment. So excuse the wardrobe door in the background there. That's me, my front bedroom. So as Derek just introduced, I'm a Director of Identity Consult. And I came to Sunderland University in 1994 it was, which is 27 years ago now, isn't it, by my last reckoning. And it was different times then. It was, to give you an example, if you wanted to make a phone call, mobile phones were the size of bricks and no one owned one. So you didn't make a phone call on the iPhone 12, you went to the phone box. Would you believe it? You handwrote assignments. So we handwrote them and then we walked down to the School of Health Sciences, handed them in and get them stamped. We wrote letters to our friends back home. So no one had email addresses, and there's 4 channels on the television. So Channel 5 wasn't even sort of rolled out from that perspective. So it was a long time ago. It makes me feel very old. But in terms of the places I live, just in terms of the background, so what you see my cursor there. So that's room 508. That's where I spent my first year. So that's it's quite nostalgic. I mean, City Space is a project that we delivered for the University Identity Consult, but it was quite poignant that it ended up with the demolition of Wearmouth Hall, because there's a lot of fond memories there. That's where I spent my first year. Moving up to the top right, that's where I spent my second year. So I think that's still standing. That's sort of by the precinct. It's the Oval, that's called. And I'm pretty sure that's not been demolished as the last time I had a look. So 7 of us lived in there. And then in the 3rd and 4th years, that's Hilton Road, number 45, just above St Mark's Garage. To give you an idea there, that was squalid that house was. It was there was an accidental fire in the house one night where the fire brigade were called, and when the landlord inspected the damage, he said he reckons the fire's improved the place. So that was gave you some idea around the around the conditions in which we lived. But very, very happy times there. So that was 1994 to 1998. So in terms of my sort of career journey, so I thought I'd just say in terms of where I've got from where I was to now. So I did the health studies degree. So just to talk you through the journey of how I got from the health studies degree to construction project management is quite a tale that'll take longer than an hour. So I won't go into too much detail there. But yeah, so I did the health studies degree at the School of Health Sciences on Fleming and Pasteur building, predominantly. From that perspective, graduated in 1997. And then in my third year, I stood for to be president of the Students' Union, which surprisingly won that election, and did that from 1997 to 98, which was brilliant experience. It was to give you an idea, then actually in that year in office, I was lucky enough that we secured the bonded warehouse facility. We moved offices from Carlton campus, where Langham Tower is, through to Wearbank House, which is where Manor was and where St Peter's campus is, from that perspective. And it was also the year, interestingly, that the £1,000 tuition fee was brought in as well. So yeah, really good year. It was a really good experience. Sort of what the skills that I learned there really set me on a journey for the rest of my career, which I still take with me to this day, and I still mention on my CV as well. Interestingly, from there, I went on to do an MSc in exercise and nutrition at the University of Liverpool after that. From there, actually, how this came about is what I specialised in from the health studies degree to the nutrition and exercise masters was cardiac rehabilitation. And there's a lot of part-time roles within that sort of field, but not a lot of full-time roles really. And while I did that part-time, I thought I'd take a job as a civil servant just to see me through. Well, actually, from there, from doing project work at the civil service and then moving to a Merseyside local authority for 5 years, and then to be a project management consultant. What I started off was basically just for 6 months or so doing project management, as it were. Actually, something I really enjoyed. Hopefully excelled at to an extent, and actually my career path went entirely differently from what I started off at Sunderland, and from doing the masters ended up being something entirely different, which I think predominantly Derek was telling me, this is you guys are sort of doing business degrees. That could be a path that you take as well, really, in terms of what you're thinking you might do now might not be what you end up doing, but that's okay. Life can take many different sort of forks in the road. And then just in recent years, became a director of identity consulting, who was Sunderland based. Where head offices in Sunderland. We've got offices in York and Preston. We've got 47 staff, and growing at the moment despite the pandemic, which is really, really good. And in 2018, 5 of us actually bought the company from the previous owner. So there's 5 of us now who own the company. So yeah, that's a little bit about my sort of journey around how I got to where I am now. And I think, say, just Derek touched on it there, actually, just some of the schemes we've done just to as identity consult, which makes me extremely proud. So given I loved my time at Sunderland, and as I say, that was a big pull when I joined Identity Consult, was around the relationship with the university. But we've delivered numerous projects. I think most recently the Cadaveric Centre, in terms of the some design work going on there. But previously we did City Space, which replaced Wearmouth Hall, which I lived in. We did the Centre for Enterprise and Innovation. It's a good conferencing facility there, where we have our away days in there, in that meeting room space there. And there's also my old stomping ground, the Sciences Complex. We've done various sort of building projects within the Sciences Complex and refurbishments and the like. So real strong tie to the university still, and keeping regular contact with the Alumni Association as well. So to keep that links really something I'm very proud of. So that's a little bit about me, my background, as it were. So I suppose now to the top 10 tips, really. And as I say on this, if I could give you some recommended reading now, if you're in your third year and you're sort of all busy doing assignments and dissertations, then sort of another reading list is probably not what you need at the moment. But if you do get the chance, and I say when things are a bit less busy for yourself, some really good books which I sort of really distilled the sort of 10 tips from. So 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that's by Stephen Covey. That's a good book. There's a recent one, Atomic Habits by James Clear, that I've sort of learnt heavily from. Very old text, actually, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, famous American. Sort of the Carnegie style of management, you may have learned a little bit about. That's a good book as well. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which gives you the benefits of practicing something that you're good at heavily. Interestingly, I read Gareth Southgate's recent book, Anything is Possible. That's a good one as well. I pulled some good tips from. And then there's the rest of the list of them there. So not exhaustive, but some of the sort of good text that I've sort of referred to. If you got a chance to read through those, that'd certainly be useful reading for yourselves if you've not done so already. So here's the 10 tips. Then you'd be glad to see. I'll come out of the presentation in a second. Okay, so some of these are fairly cryptic, but I'll talk us through each of those. So do the basics well. That's tip 1. Rome wasn't built in a day. Number 2. Number 3, practice makes permanent. Number 4, treat others as you want to be treated. 5, do your best. 6, be prepared. 7, control the controllables. 8, look after yourself. 9, understand what you enjoy. And number 10, have a growth mindset. Okay, so I'll use this point to come out of the slide deck so we can mix it up a little bit. So can everyone hear me okay still? Is that thumbs up, Derek? Yeah, is that?
Yep.
Had
my mic switched off. Yes, I can hear.
Yeah, excellent. Good. Yeah, so do the basics well. That's tip number 1. Okay. Do the basics well. What do I mean by that? Okay, so you can never be on time. You can either be early or you can be late, unless you've got an atomic clock where you're literally on time. When I say do the basics well, life's sort of fairly complicated. It's busy, but if you do the basics well, so if you're professional, you're courteous, you turn up on time, you're well presented. Now, well presented now doesn't mean wearing a shirt and tie particularly anymore, but be well presented and do those basics well. As I say, that's my first tip really. And I think the big one to come out of that is to, if I could say to anybody, is manage expectations. So I'll give you the analogy of your boss in your future careers. He asks you to produce a report, and he asks you when you can do it by. So person number 1 says I can do it by 5 o'clock on Thursday. Person number 2 says I can do it by 5 o'clock on the Friday, and you produce the 2 identical reports, both of high quality, and you both hand it in at 3 o'clock on the Friday. So who comes out best out of that? Is it the person that's overpromised it for the Thursday, or is it the person who's delivered it early on the Friday? It's the second person. So I think if we give you, always be realistic and manage expectations of the people that you work for, and in life generally, that's a good tip. But do the basics well. I think that's the first thing to say. The second one was Rome wasn't built in a day. So what do I mean by Rome wasn't built in a day? Okay, so I think, so just to give you a bit of anecdotal experience, really, when I had a brilliant year as president of the student union, it was such good experience. You know, it was the year we inaugurated Lord Putnam as Chancellor of the university. There was the opportunity to meet cabinet members, cabinet ministers and MPs. There was dealing with vice chancellors and university governors and pro vice chancellors and heads of school and so on. It was quite a come down when I finished that role, and leaving Sunderland and so on. Is that from that perspective, I think there's a phrase, to walk a million miles starts with a single step. So, and it takes 25 years, do you think, to get to the top of your career? Generally, around about age 50, your late 40s, early 50s. So Rome wasn't built in a day. As I say, don't worry if when you first sort of finish and you're going into the world of work from your degree, if things are happening, you know, perceiving to be slower than you would have liked, you know, be patient. Don't worry if you haven't mapped your life out yet. I didn't decide what I wanted to do in terms of project management straight away. That came a little bit later. And as I say, from that side, as I say, things don't happen immediately. So don't worry if that's the case. Rome wasn't built in a day. Third one is this one, practice makes permanent. So there's a couple of good books on this, actually. It's the Malcolm Gladwell. He wrote a book called The Outliers. Really recommend that. And they say, what's the difference between a novice and a genius? So the answer to that, they think, is 10,000 hours practice. Simple as that. Okay, so they use the example of the Beatles in Hamburg. You know, Lennon and McCartney were two of the greatest songwriters of the 20th century. But actually, when they played for 2 years solidly in Hamburg for 12 hours a day, and practiced and practiced and practiced. So by undertaking the practice in something they enjoyed, sort of made them as good as they were. Famous golfer called Gary Player, he said, people said I was a lucky golfer, but it's funny, the more I practiced, the luckier I got. So if you can develop your passions, so in Gary Player's case it was golf, in the Beatles' case it was music. If you've got a passion, that might take time to develop that passion, whatever that is. You might not know exactly what that is as yet, but if you practice at that practice makes permanent. And as I say, the difference between a novice, they say a novice and a genius is 10,000 hours practice. So it's to practice, practice makes permanent. Number 4. Okay, so this one is old as man itself. I think treat others as you want to be treated. So I think every world religion prescribes to this maxim: treat others as you want to be treated. Well, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, all have got varying degrees of this, and humanists have as well. But treat others as you want to be treated. I think in your professional life, if you're courteous, you're kind, if you exhibit positive behaviours, people generally reciprocate. They'll generally reciprocate. If you're positive towards them and you're professional, you're courteous and you're kind, they'll copy your behaviours and reciprocate that back. But if I could give you sort of, as I say, there's various, I can refer you to the Dale Carnegie book. Actually, the biggest thing to take from this is actually, if you can learn to listen, and as I say, from the perspective of getting the best out of people, if people's favourite topic to talk about is themselves. So if you're prepared to listen and ask open questions, one, you actually might learn something as well. But two, that's how you're getting the best out of people, if you're prepared to listen as well. So I think treating others as you want to be treated, as I say, the behaviours you want to see in other people, how they behave towards you, not always easy, but if you can exhibit those behaviours yourself, as I say, be kind, be courteous, be professional, and be positive. Okay, so what's number 5 then? That was number 5. I said it was do your best. Okay, so all you can do is your best. So I'd recommend to say a really good book is Atomic Habits by James Clear, that I've just not long finished reading. Okay, so when I say do your best, well, that's quite a sweeping statement, isn't it? But it's do your best in everything that you do. I think if you live in the moment now, and that's not living in the moment to the expense of the future, but make the best, do the best assignment you can, do the best dissertation you can, you know, write the best assignment, make the best cup of coffee you can, be the best friend you can, son, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, dad, mum. If you can just do your best in everything that you do on a day-to-day basis, that'll help things fall into place, I always think. So if we could say tip number 5 is to do your best. In terms of number 6, so I'm going through this, and there will be a chance for sort of any questions at the end, obviously. This is an old Scout maxim, so anyone who's in the Scouts or the Guides or any of those organisations, but be prepared. If you fail to prepare to fail, as the old phrase goes. But be clear within this sort of be prepared. Be clear on what you want the end goal to be. Okay, so if, for example, I have the end goal in mind, that could be doing a half marathon. Okay, so that could be I want to do a sub 1 hour 40 half marathon. I have the end goal in mind. I want to produce the best dissertation I can, so I get a first. That's your end goal, isn't it? I want to be successful in achieving getting this go for this job interview and being offered a job. I want this graduate placement. Be very clear around what you want and prepare for that as well. So at least you come out of it. It goes back to doing your best. That if you're prepared and you've done your best, then that's all you can do. But do have an end goal in mind. Have an end goal in mind around what you want to prepare for as well. And as I say, given where your careers are now, around about April time, it will be in the 3rd year of your studies. That'll be very much focused around completing your degrees now. So exam periods and dissertations and the like, you know, be very clear and be prepared that you come out of that having done your best. And I say generally on this one, on the be prepared one, you come across people who you say, oh, they there's people in life who wing it. They can just seem to sort of breathe through life and they're not having prepared anything. But generally, people who wing it, I always find are generally the ones that have practiced and do have expertise. So generally, winging it is probably not a good piece of advice. I think the thing is, if you can always fail to prepare to fail. And the seventh one, that was to control the controllables. Well, there's two things you can control. It's what you say and what you do. So the rest you can't control. You can't even control what you think, actually. That's subconscious, but you can control what you say and what you do. So what can you control? You control your actions, your values, your behaviours. And in this day and age, actually, you need to control what you type and what you post as well. Whether that's your LinkedIn profile, your Instagram, your Twitter, Facebook. I'm showing myself to be fairly old there, actually, aren't I? But you can control what you say. You can control what you do, and that includes you can control what you type as well. So control the controllables. There's things in life you can't always control, but it links to the other. If you're prepared and you do your best, and you can control what you can do, you can control what you say, you can control what you do, control your actions, your values, and your behaviours. Control the controllables. Okay. And then this is a number 8. This is one that I strongly recommend because it really works wonders for me personally. I'm sure it does for everybody as well. But look after yourself. Look after yourself. What do I mean by that? So Covey, if you read his book, The 7 Habits of Influential People, he calls it sharpening the saw. Jordan Peterson, he's a fairly controversial author, isn't he? But it's like he had a line which is treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. To give yourself an analogy, actually, if you're on an aeroplane, it says put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. Well, that's a good analogy because don't feel bad about prioritising yourself in terms of your own mental health, in terms of your own physical health and your spiritual health. Personally, I'm 100% more effective when I've had 8 hours sleep if I can, even though I've got 2 small kids. When I exercise, when I've had a good diet, when I moderate my alcohol intake, when I do yoga, which I took up, which sort of helped solve my bad back. And of late in lockdown as well, just managed to get a little bit healthier and lose some weight as well. Off the back of that, I'm 100% more effective and much more clear thinking, much more able to deal with the slings and arrows that life throws at me. So I think from that perspective, look after yourself, sharpen the saw, treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping, and don't feel bad about putting yourself first. As I say, you look after yourself, I think makes the whole everything in life a bit easier. So number 9, that was my tips there. So understand what you enjoy. Okay, understand what you enjoy. What do I mean by that? Okay, so when I was young and I was asked, what do I want to be when I grow up? So at certain times in my life, I was a hotel manager randomly. When I was young, my mum always reminds me of. So if anyone wants to be a hotel manager, then I said that was my ambition when I was younger. Then it was a footballer, but then I realised I didn't have the talent to sort of make a living and being a professional footballer. I managed to scale the heights of the 3rd team at the University of Sunderland, and was dropped not long after that, actually. So there was never going to be a footballer. But what I would say is there's good and bad in every career that you do. Okay, so if you're unsure about what you want to do now, I was when I did the health studies degree and when I was president, and even going into my MSc. From that perspective, don't fixate on the title. So don't. I'd say, if you said I wanted to be a construction project manager, or I wanted to be an accountant, or I wanted to be, chief executive, I'd say I wouldn't fixate on the title, but I'd fixate on the things that you enjoy. Okay, so if you're introverted and you like detail and you're analytical and you like spreadsheets, if you enjoy those things, then you're probably more suited to be, a statistician or an analyst. If you're an extrovert and you like the big picture, you're gregarious, you're outgoing, then maybe a career in project management will be well suited, and you like getting the best out of people. It's have to think about the things you enjoy first, and then get the career and the job to suit that thereafter. There's a real good book, actually, which is called Surrounded by Idiots, actually, and that looks at different. It's one of the texts that I recommended earlier on. And that looks at the different personality types that we all are, and it splits it into red, yellow, green, and blue. So in terms of the sort of alpha personalities who are fairly domineering, that's the red, whereas green and blues are more introspective, yellows are more outgoing. So we all sit somewhere within those personality types, and there's different kind of jobs that suit us all within those personality types as well. And you can't fundamentally change who you are either. As I say, our personality types are fairly set. You can adapt and you can adapt your behaviours, but that's a good book to read. But as I understand what you enjoy, I think that's the first start for 10. Think around the things that you enjoy, whether it's through your studies or jobs that you've done or in life generally. Try and get your career to suit that, then you've got half a chance of enjoying your job. But I'd say don't fixate on the title. I'd look at the actual things that you enjoy and what job would fit that as well. Get the career to match what you enjoy doing, rather than the other way around. So, and then my final one, as I say, this was have a growth mindset. So I'll just go back to the list again. I'll just reshare so we can recap at the end. So let's crank up the presentation. Okay, hopefully everyone will be able to see that in a sec. So this is the final one, have a growth mindset. So again, a really good book here. It's called Growth Mindset by Alan Glasgow and Joshua Moore. I definitely recommend if you get a chance to read that. So they talk around a fixed versus a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset, they avoid challenges. They give up as a person who gives up easily, sees effort as fruitless, ignores useful negative feedback, constructive feedback, I should say, and feels threatened by the success of others. A growth mindset, you embrace challenges, you persist in the face of challenges and adversity. You see effort as a path to maturity. You learn from constructive feedback. You find lessons from the success of others, and you've got an open mind. So if you've got a growth mindset, say if you get the chance to have a look at that text, it's really good. It's really a good text. But to have a growth mindset, that's having an open mindset. And I think it's part of that growth mindset, and this is something that's really come to pass over the last year. There's a famous economist who's called John Maynard Keynes, if you may have sort of studied in your come across in your studies, but great phrase of his: when the facts change your mind. Or it's a variation of that theme. So over the last year, there's been a sort of global pandemic. So we've all had to the facts have changed, the landscape's changed. So we've had to all change our minds and change our approaches. But if you embrace that with a growth mindset, so you embrace those challenges, we all persist in the face of adversity. And say, in terms of everything, as university undergraduates in this last year, there's been real setbacks, real sort of a time of real sort of turmoil and change. If you can approach that with a growth mindset and take the good from those challenges, and that can help you develop, that's the biggest advice I could give you. And I think on that one, I say if you could say the Growth Mindset book by Helen Glasgow and Joshua Moore, is a really good text. So as we've gone on, I whittled this down from a list of, gosh, I had about 20 to start with, and I tried to distill them down into a top 10 that we could keep within the time that we've got. But say recapping, if you do the basics well, Rome wasn't built in a day, so it won't all happen tomorrow. But it's a long journey in terms of your career, of which you'll reach your peak in about 25 years' time. So Rome wasn't built in a day. Practice makes permanent, or practice makes perfect. Treat others as you want to be treated. That it's a fairly simple thing to say, isn't it? But I think that if you exhibit positive behaviours to people, they will do the same back generally. And if they don't, they're not to be bothered with. Do your best in everything you do on a day-to-day basis. It's all the little things. Atomic Habits by James Clear. Definitely have a read of that, because if you do your best on all the little things, then the bigger picture sort of sorts itself out. Always be prepared. As I say, prepare and have the end in mind. So whether that's to get the job that you want, to hand in the best dissertation that you can, the best assignment you can, is to picture what you want as your own goal and prepare for that. Control the controllables. Well, you can control what you say, you can control what you do. And say those are the things you can control. So those things that are within your control. Again, if you control those as best you can, you'll get positive outcomes. Look after yourself. Look after yourself physically. Look after yourself mentally, spiritually. As I say, doing a day-to-day job and taking the slings and arrows that life throws at you when you've you're physically, mentally, and spiritually well balanced. I could say it's massively important and not to be overlooked. Understand what you enjoy, so don't fixate on the career itself or the job itself. Understand what makes you tick. Is it getting involved in detail? Is it writing reports? Is it looking at spreadsheets? And then have a think around what jobs and careers would best be suited to what you enjoy, because if you do what you enjoy, it doesn't have to make the working day go faster. And have a growth mindset. That's particularly important in this last year. Have an open mind. When the facts change your mind. Learn from others. Learn from constructive criticism. Persist in the face of adversity. Embrace challenges. Learn lessons, and that'll always help you kick on and improve from that perspective. So, if a quick sort of quick run through there. Sorry if I spoke fast. From that perspective, I'll just unshare now. And Derek and colleagues, if you've got any,
sure, Matty,
like to ask or a discussion, then please do.
Sure. I think if the students walk away today with those 10 points and test them out, I think they're going to see the benefit, the growth, the personal growth within that. I loved you saying your statement, all the best ideas are stolen. I would fully agree with that. Are you still there, Matty?
Still there, yeah.
Yeah, your screen's slightly froze. But I've got a couple of questions. I looked at your career trajectory, how it unfolded, and if you take the stereotypical civil servant, local government, and I'm not saying those stereotypes are right, but you've got certain mindsets working for a government organisation. To step out of that, and my question is, you not only undertook project management, which you had the natural skills for, but what you did do, you stepped out of the safety of the environment and you became a consultant. Now, I know that can be very unpredictable and carries a lot of stress. So my question is, how do you as an individual manage the stresses and strains of running a, successful organisation, but how do you manage that stress to keep it successful?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, going from the civil service to local government, it was a change of mindset. There was, and it was a big bureaucracy. You can imagine the civil service and a sort of local authority going to a consultancy, which is a lot more fleet of foot. And it's funny, at the time, there was a thought process really in the early sort of 2000s that he couldn't get made redundant from the civil service or local government. It was a job for life. And I actually think what this transpired is probably consultancy is more secure than some local government jobs, actually, from that perspective, which is interesting. But in terms of managing the stresses, I mean, I think the biggest one, as I say, if you follow those 10 tips, Derek, to be honest with you, I'd say the one around looking after yourself, understand what you enjoy, walk into something thinking, well, at least to prepare for this, at least I've done my best with it. At least you can sleep at night thinking, well, I've put those things into practice, and all you can do is your best, isn't it? And there is, I'd say, life can be stressful. It's been stressful in the last year. You're balancing family, you're balancing, looking after 47 staff, making sure they're all gainfully employed. You're looking after clients, it includes the university, from that perspective. But if you, as I say, from my perspective, I just try and stick to those core principles, and at least then you've got half a chance of managing the stresses, I suppose. Yeah,
sure. I always recommend to my students to focus on purchasing biographies or autobiographies. And, I took a quick screenshot of your list of books. And yes, I would strongly, Covey, 7, definitely, 7 Habits. I found that very informative. And I think when you're reading biographies or those recommended texts or autobiographies, I think there's always a takeaway, and try it out to see how it sits with you, your personality, and you as an individual. I particularly liked your 10 tips. As you were going through the 10 tips, I was thinking, what about enjoyment? And then I realized, point 9, you had the enjoyment side, because I think it's very important that you do enjoy how you live your life. and I think that rubs off on colleagues. What would you say? How do you handle failure?
Yeah, and yeah, that can come in any number of forms. You have to dust yourself down and try again, don't you? It's yeah, you know, life does knock you down sometimes, and that can be over the years. That could be as you sort of embark on your career, you might not get the job that you applied for. You might get overlooked for a promotion. But as I say, if you go back to, well, you did your best, you exhibited positive behaviours, you're prepared, you controlled the controllables, and from that perspective, then at least you can sit there, you know, with your shoulders back and think, well, I've done my very best on that one, because life will throw failures at you, and that can be in any whole number of areas, from work to home to whichever. So I think if you think, as I go back to, if you do your best and treat others as you want to be treated, and you stick to those principles, that's how you deal with it. Because as I say, then at least you can come through the other side, as it were.
Yeah, sure. It was interesting what you said, and this is quite often what I tell the students. Just because, for example, you're doing a marketing degree doesn't mean to say that you're going to end up being a marketeer. And I think what was reflected in your presentation, you know, you started off health studies degree, but how life's twists and turns, and opportunities, keeping open to opportunities within that. And also the fact that you talked about, and I agree with that, it's a slow burn quite often in your career. And I agree, it can take over 25 years, which might seem, you know, a very long time, but it's enjoying that journey and learning how to grow, how to network, how to enjoy your life within that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and hand it up. Yes, we have a question. My teams wasn't actually showing hands up, but Yasser, over to you. Would you like to switch your mic off and ask a question?
Yes, I don't mind. Hello. Well, first, thanks, Matthew, for sharing all these informations and tips. And like, it was really interesting, and there was some ideas that has attracted my attention. Is when you said first focus on what you like, on what is your personality, and then focus on your career and what you are going to do. For example, if you are like mathematics and analysis, probably you can focus on being a statistician. Or probably if you are open-minded person, you like people and you like to create things, probably a project management. But what if what you are studying is a bit different of what you are desiring to do? And how can you find that courage in order to keep focusing on achieving what you like? However, your background and the justification of your skills are probably not adequate of what you would like to do. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It's a good question, isn't it? I mean, in my case, Yasser, I mean, it was a steep learning curve, actually. I mean, when I first went into project management, it was I had someone on an interview panel who liked how I came across. It gave me an opportunity. I didn't have much experience within that field at all, and I learned on the job. So I did I suppose it was involved going the extra mile to sort of catch up on that learning curve. Really, I did all the project management qualifications. I learned about design. I learned about construction, how a building was put together, and I was playing a little bit of catch up compared to some of those who come from construction related degrees. But we all caught up in the end. So I think if you're doing it, I'm right in thinking, Derek, is it business and marketing sort of students who are mainly dialed in today, is it?
We've got postgraduate students who've got the MBA, but we've got the other routes at postgraduate, and we may have some undergraduate students tuning in. Yeah.
So from that side, as I say, what I would say, if you're doing MBAs and business study degrees, what a great opportunity. You've not pigeonholed yourselves at all. You know, if you do a civil engineering degree, you know, it's great. You're going to be a civil engineer, aren't you? And your life's mapped out at 22. Or 21, 22, but the MBA, and I know this from the university sort of MBA, is you know, holds a lot of prestige out in the marketplace and so on. Is that you've got the opportunity now where you can map out your career in whatever direction you want to go in, and that's sometimes they say around a degree which isn't entirely vocational to a specific sort of engineering or architecture or medicine, actually, that's great, because in a way you've got all the opportunity to sort of develop your career around whichever skill sets and whichever sort of suits your personality type. And it's such good grounding as well. You know, what does it teach you for doing a degree? Well, you know, you walk into jobs, you can think laterally, you can work with other people, you can hand in a quality, complex piece of work on time. You need to, all the skills that those you know, doing a sort of 3-year degree and a master's give you into the workplace. You know, if you apply those, then you'll do well.
Okay. Thank you for that,
thank
Matty.
you.
Matty, I've got a question. You know, you mentioned about your business. It's, you know, got various offices around the UK. What advice could you give to the students about when they apply for the job? What do you look for when you want to recruit someone?
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's good. We do have a graduate placement, actually. If you go onto our website, if anyone's interested in project management or quantity surveying, project management probably more so with the business degree rather than the quantity surveying side of things. What do we look for? Yeah, I mean, you do get a lot of CVs through, and it's sometimes it's hard to sort of pull out the elements that are set someone above, as it were. Because if you think that, you know, you're in a graduate market where a lot of people have got, nowadays it seems the bar's raised a lot higher than when I was. It was a lot of 2 2s and 3rds back in the late 90s. Now it's 2 1s and 1sts from that perspective. I always think to say, if you've done voluntary activities, which is just shows outside of your studies, which whether that's through doing sports, whether that's doing voluntary activities through charities, and something which just shows you to be a well-rounded person just outside of your studies, that is something that will always jump out. I think in terms of on CV, and it's a funny one with sort of CVs nowadays, actually, as I say, I'm not sure whether they're becoming sort of a bit more old-fashioned now in terms of people look at LinkedIn profiles and the like, but it's to be as concise as you can as well, and to concentrate on not just the degree that you've done, but also the skills that you've got. So if you think around, so say project management, I do sort of presentations on this, probably about 50%, well, 40% of it, I'd say, is around the technical skills. About 60% of it is around your behaviours. And that's around how you work as part of a team, how you communicate, how you influence others, how you negotiate, how you collaborate, how you lead ultimately as well. Although that's obviously something you develop over time. So I think if you can concentrate on a CV on how you demonstrate the positive behaviours, that goes an awful long way.
Good, good. Would anyone like to ask another question? Because we're coming up to 3:45. Yes, Sun, would you like to ask a question, Sun? You just, take off your mic. Yeah.
My name is Sandy. Actually, when I did my job, and sometimes I do some part-time job, I found myself I'm always careless. How can I do? Sometimes when I will forgot to turn on or turn off, maybe do careless. So I always want to be careful, but I always careless. How can I do?
So how you're looking at, you feel as though that you try to do a good job, but you feel as though that you come across as careless.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Matty.
Yeah. Sometimes maybe my boss, he didn't angry me, but sometimes I will angry about myself.
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? You know, all of us say that's around managing expectations, isn't it? And I went back to, I think it was lesson number 1, actually. I'll just the notes are scribbled down, but I gave the analogy of the person who says, okay, boss, I'll have this report to you by close of play at 5 o'clock on Thursday, and actually deliver it for 3 p.m. on Thursday. And then the person who says, I'll do it for 5 o'clock on the Friday and delivers it 2 hours early, is where you can, as I say, the best thing you can do. Now, the demands of a job are the demands of a job, but sometimes it can be to do with how you communicate and manage those expectations as well. You find most people are fairly decent, people are fairly understanding, and they'll work with you. As long as you're open and transparent and you manage those expectations, that's the biggest tip I could give you. And as an example today, one of my assistant project managers, he'd he was just fairly open with me that he'd had terrible IT issues and he couldn't get on the server. But at least he told me, and I was able to say to the client, you know, are we okay? We produce that piece of work with you tomorrow, and he says no, that's absolutely fine because I don't need it till then anyway. And it was all done with open communication, and that's probably the best tip I could give you: manage expectations and just be open.
Yeah, Sonny, I would also possibly keep a diary. Each day you identify what you feel as though you did well and what you may have struggled with, and try to identify the reasons for that. But I agree with Matty. You know, you might be putting too much pressure on yourself to do everything perfect, and it's a learning process within that. So yeah, kind of reflect on that. Would anyone else like to ask a question as we come up? Yeah, we're just up to 3:45.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my last question to you, Matty. You mentioned sharpening the saw. How are you sharpening your saw?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, so I went into lockdown there at 14 and a half stone. So how that happened, I do not know, because I say quietly, I've always ran, I've always cycled, swam, and done those things just very, very quietly over a number of years as I sort of approached middle age, just crept on at a pound at a time. So I made the decision actually to say just around that's something I didn't want to be, as it were. So sharpen the saw. So if you go back to what my aim was, it was to get to 12 stone, and that was when I first went to university at 18. That was the way I entered Wearmouth Hall in. I soon went above 12 stone after my first term.
With a healthy diet.
Yeah, and it was a healthy diet. Yeah, that's the biggest thing I think. Exercise regularly. I do that, and biggest thing for me as well. I love doing yoga, and I say I'm quite reminiscent of a middle-aged guy really that suffered all kinds of joint pains and back stiffness. Doing yoga, I do every day, either by myself or in a class or a one-to-one. It's the best thing I've done. Yeah, I think that allows you to start the day well, and as I say, just it balances the body, mind, and spirit. So I recommend you, yeah, definitely, if you get the chance to have a go at yoga, and if you do have a go, don't do it once a week, do it most days. And that's how you'll improve.
I might just take that on board. My wife's into yoga, so I might join her class and see how it goes. Matty, Thank you very much for that. Very insightful, and the 10 tips, yes, excellent. Thank you very much indeed, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, thanks, Derek, and thanks everyone. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.
Take care.
Cheers now. Bye-bye.
Thank you.